For some reason, I notice this a lot when it comes to a variety of other critiques of people like Hassan, Avash, and whoever other, like Xander Hall, a bunch of other people on the left who are content creators, all happen to be live streamers. There seems to be no charitability levied to people at all, and I don't know why that is. Because, like, if you understand that the person is on the left, a leftist, so Keffals, for example, and you look into her advocacy and the policies that she supports, i.e. the liberation of queer and trans people from oppression, I feel like a reasonable person should be charitable and be like, oh, this queer trans woman is making a haha funny joke here, and I might not find it funny, but I don't think that that means that she is queer phobic, right? I feel like a reasonable person should be able to do that. So there are a lot of things going on in the world right now, a lot of really important stuff. Depending on who you are or your sensibilities or the people that you care about, there are a lot of marginalized groups out there currently that are being targeted for removal from society by Republicans in a variety of legislatures and usually just red states, which is not good and very unfortunate. There was recently a protest, and we did a video about that in Oklahoma, where pro-trans protesters occupied a state house for a little bit peacefully and chanted trans lives matter and all kind of stuff like that, which triggered people like Ben Shapiro. So there's like a lot of important stuff going on, but unfortunately, a lot of people are talking about a bunch of other shit on Twitter right now, in the lefty sphere, which I see a lot of because I follow a variety of people from all walks of life in that sphere. We're talking a lot about Keffals recently and also the Wizard game, and I've got some thoughts and opinions, and it's really unfortunate that this is a thing that I feel like I should have to talk about. But I do think I have a more nuanced opinion than maybe some other people might. So if you're not familiar with Keffals or what's going on, Keffals is a trans woman, content creator. She got a lot of media attention because she was trying to get the website Kiwi Farms taken down from the internet, which is a website that hosts all manner of neo-Nazis who go around and dox and collect personal information about people they don't like, in many cases trans people, and then they go around and harass them on the social media platforms, even swat them, and that happened to Keffals as well. Keffals ended up being the victim of swatting, where they falsely accused Keffals of crimes. The state in Canada ended up sending a SWAT team there. Eventually, Keffals is literally having to move around the world in order to stay safe because it was a pretty relentless assault. And she got a lot of media attention from that. She was able to gain a lot of name recognition because of that, which is an unfortunate way for that to happen, and I don't think by her choice. But she does have a bigger platform now because of that, and a variety of the content that she puts out and stuff like this. But because of that, it seems like once you become a more popular figure on the left, there are suddenly going to be a bunch of people who are really excited about talking about you in a negative capacity, about spreading rumors or calling you out for certain things. Like, right-wingers will do this, and it makes sense because they disagree with the politics. Keffals is a leftist, so Republicans are just not going to like that. Conservatives are not going to like that. But it also seems like if a person gets popular enough on the left, well, then the left starts attacking them as well. And that can potentially be a good thing because it is good for movements and groups and communities to be self-critical and try to analyze ways that they might be doing harm to people or things that are not conducive to the continued growth of that community or prosperity of that community. There is good faith criticism to be had about a variety of people on the left, and content creators particularly, which is who we're going to be talking about because they're the ones with the platforms who are going to be talked about, who have the popularity and name recognition to be talked about, right? I'm seeing some of that, but I'm not seeing all of that, you know what I mean, and all of what I'm seeing. So to give you a bit of a backstory, Keffals got in some drama some time ago before this most recent one, where there was a white woman who made a book about dumplings and noodles, like a recipe book. And there was a tweet that went off of somebody asking, well, why did a white person have to make this book about noodles and dumplings? And then Keffals quote tweeted, I'm paraphrasing, noodles are tasty, or because noodles are tasty. The assumption of that tweet being that, so going to be a lot of Asian countries that are usually going to be making dumplings and noodles and whatnot. So like, why would a white person be making a recipe book about that? The response, because noodles are tasty, I think is actually a good one because that's probably why. Because anybody can make noodles. Anybody has the capacity to make noodles and dumplings. If you wanted to get a recipe book written by a non-white person, you could probably do that. They are definitely out there. But for some reason, people on the left are suddenly calling Keffals out for racism because of this, which is really odd to me. Like, I was not aware that making a recipe book about noodles and dumplings is like inherently a problematic thing to do. as a white person. Now, of course, if in that book you are literally saying racist shit, well then sure, that's not good. But if it's literally just a recipe book about dumplings and noodles and this person seems to like those a lot enough to make a recipe book about it, signal boost non-white creators making such books instead, if that's the thing. Because I would advocate that people do seek out books from people who have cultural ties to such cuisine. One, because it's going to be more authentic and closer to a person who's in that culture. And two, you might get better results, right? And three, you'd be supporting a marginalized identity by buying their recipe book. But that wasn't the conversation being had. The conversation being had was, oh, Keffals is racist because of this or whatever. Another instance of this happening was Keffals put out a tweet where she added the Italian flag colors to the progress flag, the one that has like the triangle with the intersex and the trans colors and the rainbows on the other side and the black and brown stripes. She added the Italian stripes onto that, not replacing anything, but adding it on because she's Italian, and it was a joke about how noisy the design of the flag is, which many people have made jokes about. If you didn't know this, Keffals is a trans woman, and I believe queer in sexuality as well. So, like, it's just a funny in-joke from somebody in the community. But somehow that was enough to get people riled up and to call her, like, anti-queer or problematic or tying it to the racism before from the previous Noodles Are Tasty comment. For some reason, there's, like, no charitability levied to Keffals from certain people on the left, which are usually referred to as like tender queers or whatever, people that are like about using tone indicators a lot and safe spaces, which, you know, are things that you are allowed to try to create. Safe spaces, communities that are very inclusive, like you could do that, but they, for some reason, also expect that to be the norm on public platforms like Twitter, not within those social circles. And the way that a lot of this is talked about from some of them is pretty problematic. Like, there was literally a person who Keffals debated who was trying to at Elon Musk to get Keffals, a trans woman, deplatformed by Elon Musk, who literally is very transphobic, very anti-trans, and is seemingly in support of a variety of people, politicians like Ron DeSantis, who want to eradicate trans people from society, was adding Elon Musk to try to get Keffals deplatformed from Twitter because of the most recent discourse, which we're about to talk about. And for some reason, I notice this a lot when it comes to a variety of other critiques of people like Hassan, Avash, and whoever other, like Xander Hall, a bunch of other people on the left who are content creators, all happen to be live streamers, where like they'll talk about Hassan and the fact that he bought a house for him and his mother to live in, and also bought himself a nice car or whatever, because apparently to be a true leftist, it's a poverty cult and you have to be not wealthy. Even though they don't know about the amount of times Hassan has donated money that he has made to charitable causes and advocacy groups. The ones that he doesn't publicize and the ones that he has publicized, they seem to conveniently ignore. It's very odd. And this is the same for, like I say, people like Vosh and Xander Hall, where like there's no charitability levied to people at all. And I don't know why that is. Because, like, if you understand that the person is on the left, a leftist, so Keffals, for example, and you look into her advocacy and the policies that she supports, i.e. the liberation of queer and trans people from oppression, and then you see her add the Italian colors, because she's Italian, to the progress flag, because it's already got all these other colors on it, and that's the joke, haha, lamau, I feel like a reasonable person should be charitable and be like, oh, this queer trans woman who is Italian is making a haha funny joke here, and I might not find it funny, but I don't think that that means that she is queer-phobic, right? I feel like a reasonable person should be able to do that. Same for the Noodles Are Tasty comment. But, you know, that leads us to the current discourse that people are talking about ad nauseum for some unknown reason. Well, I shouldn't say some unknown reason. The current discourse that people are talking about ad nauseum for a variety of reasons, some of which I think are actually important to talk about, and some that are completely insane. So, the most recent discourse has been Keffals used the R slur, and people are upset about it. So now there's this whole conversation about, oh, reclamation or whatever, because Keffals does have disabilities, and there is an argument to be made for reclamation if you're using it as like a term of endearment about yourself or friends around you. There's a more nuanced conversation to be had there, but they're saying that she's super ableist because of this, and like some people are literally advocating for her to get deplatformed from Twitter for using the R slur. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, and I'll give you my opinions on the matter in a second. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it is a very, very niche concept that people should not really use the R slur. I'm sorry, but it's a bit niche. If you go out to average Joes, and I would know this, working in the food service workforce for 10 years, and seeing so many different people, I can tell you, people I've worked with, even customers, the R slur is not met with the same kind of social stigma as other slurs, like even the F slur, and obviously like the N word, of course, which is, there's not even really much of a comparison there. It's not as big of a deal to a lot of people than it is for people online. And I will say the motives for not wanting people to use the R slur are valid. Those being, oh, well, if you use that slur, it has been in the past used to dehumanize people with disability. And if you use it, even if you're not using it on a person who has disability or whatever, that can cause harm, in collateral to other people. And I understand that, and I get that. I think there is a different and more nuanced conversation to be had about that, though, in that if you are using it for reclamation, like using it as a term of endearment, so for example, I myself have multiple disabilities that are not visible, right? So I have chronic sinus issues that make it difficult for me to breathe. Luckily, at the ripe old age of 26, I was able to get a septoplasty where I can finally breathe clearly for the first time in literally 26 years of my life. And that's not the extent of my sinus issues, by the way, but it helps tremendously. I have chronic allergies. I'm allergic to things year-round, like dust mites, pollen. I've got some food allergies. I'm allergic to animals as well. And I live with people who also have disability, right? And we will use the R slur as a term of endearment every now and again, and that's a kind of reclamation. So this is also a thing that happens with queer people with the F slur. They will use it as a term of endearment amongst people in their group that understand that that's the way the word is being used. Now, I will say, I do not believe that the reclamation argument is a good one when it comes to using the R slur as an insult. So I believe one of the first times Keffals was getting in trouble for using it, she literally called actual Nazis the R slur. And that spawned not a lot of hate for the Nazis, but a lot of hate for Keffals for using it, right? I would not say that that is an act of reclamation. However, I will say that Keffals using it, being a disabled person, as an insult, does give her, in my eyes at least, a little bit more charitability in her use of the word as an insult. But I don't think that that's reclamation. So then the question becomes, like, by that logic, because a lot of people will tell you that, oh, well, using it as an insult is not reclamation. Well, then, am I now edgy or problematic if I call Ron DeSantis an F slur as a trans queer person myself? If I call Ron DeSantis the F slur as an insult? Because I use the F slur in my personal life, not on my public platform, but in my personal life, as a term of endearment with my friends who are aware that that's how I'm using it, and I use it self-referentially because I think it's funny. Am I now edgy or problematic for calling somebody like Ron DeSantis, who literally wants to get rid of queer people from society, the F slur? If I am, then to what degree am I? Am I at such a degree where you're adding Elon Musk to try to get me deplatformed? I don't think so. I don't think most people would have that take. But if you understand that logic, I don't know how you can't also connect that to Keffals' use of the R slur as an insult against Nazis, like the really bad people. Now, if you're using it as an insult to actual people with disability, which Keffals did do after a very long conversation that was very bad faith from the person she used it against, I can understand her frustrations. I don't think that's a great idea. I don't think that that's a thing that you should do. But I'm willing to give charitability considering that I know that Keffals has disabilities, right? Like, I'm willing to give that amount of charitability. I can still say that I don't think it should happen, and I don't like that it does happen, but I'm not gonna go so far as to hyper-focus on it on Twitter for, what has it been, like 3 or 4 days now? Like, I'm not gonna go that far. I'll just say, like, oh, well, I don't like that. I don't think that's good. Here are the reasons why. And if the person is receptive to that with, like, actual nice, good faith critique, and they alter their behavior or whatever, it is what it is. If they choose not to alter their behavior, then it is what it is. I mean, they're gonna continue to use it. I just won't engage with their content. I feel like that's a fair conclusion to reach. But that's not the conclusion that we've gotten. And I will say that a lot of the conversations that I'm seeing and the discourse that I'm seeing has not been very good faith. There have been good faith critiques out there. I think I'm making a good faith critique myself. But there have been a lot that aren't. And I think that's a big issue. Because, like I said before, it seems like if you're a leftist, and unfortunately it seems like a woman, on the left, and you gain a lot of popularity, suddenly there will be obviously a lot of people on the right attacking you, but also a lot of people on the left. And it's not just women, of course. It's like Hassan gets this, Vosh gets this, Zan gets this kind of treatment. But, for example, ContraPoints. ContraPoints said some shit about how, oh, well, I'm a trans woman or transsexual or however she identifies. And when I go to these like woke progressive spaces, people are asking pronouns and it kind of feels weird or whatever, because I feel like people should be able to assume. And if I go to a non-queer bar, people just assume she, her pronouns for me because I pass or whatever, shit like that. People got really upset about it. She also had like some comments about non-binary people or something. I don't fucking know. That was a long time ago. But she got harassed to the point where she left like the space of Twitter, and it also negatively impacted her ability to create the content on her YouTube that people love. Like the really long form, highly produced video essays about a variety of topics that are usually political in nature that people really enjoy. People on the left harassed her with this kind of mixture of good faith and bad faith critique, I guess. Usually it's going to be the bad faith critique that leads people to like deactivate their accounts or whatever, to doing that. The same thing happens when Hassan bought a house for him and his mother to live in and also leased a car. Because I don't think he actually bought it. I think he just leased it. I don't know if he's actually ended up like changing that contract to buy it or whatever. I don't fucking know. But like, I feel like you can give the good faith critiques, but the shitstorm that conspires and the bad faith critique that comes from it is just not good. It's the same thing that happened to Lindsay Ellis, right? Like, there seems to be a difficulty on the left to provide good faith critique to people and also never extend any actual charitability to people either. Like, if you understand that somebody who's using the R slur as an insult even, who is disabled themselves, also advocates for a variety of policies that would help disabled people in our society, then I'm willing to be like, okay, well, I might not agree with your uses of it in these specific cases, but it is what it is. Like, what can I do about it, right? Like, I feel like people should be able to get to that point. But for some reason, it's just not there. Like, it is true that it's a lot of clout to be gained by being on the left and attacking the more popular left-wing figures. Like, you post Keffals bad on Twitter right now, you're going to get a lot more engagement than you're used to getting. Let me tell you. You post Hassan bad, you're going to get a lot more engagement than what you're used to getting. You post Vosh bad, you're going to get a lot more engagement than you're used to getting. There is a, like, cottage industry of people that's a big part of their content. And I just don't understand it. This is actually one of the first times, like, I'm wading into this kind of drama. I usually don't, because I think it's useless, because I think it's dumb, and because I think it's counterproductive. But, like, I felt compelled to do it, because there's a lot of really dumb shit going on. And it's not just limited to Keffals. I've talked about a variety of other content creators who this happened to, and I don't think it's good any time that it happens. You can give your good faith critiques, but sometimes it goes too far. I will also say, it is not lost on me that there are a lot of people on the right that like to make sock puppet accounts and pretend to be people on the left. This happens all the time in a variety of instances. Like, you go back even to, like, the example of that one, I believe he was an elected official who forgot to log into his sock account and was like, as a black man, but he's a white person, right? Trying to defend bad conservative beliefs and, like, racist beliefs. Like, on that level, like, even that, like, hilarious of a level, that does happen, but it also happens in a more, like, competent way, where people on these far-right boards will openly talk about how they're doing it, right? And I think people should probably be more cognizant of it. I'm not suggesting that literally everybody who's giving critiques about Keffals is a covert right-winger or whatever, but I think you need to try to be aware of that at the very least when analyzing where are these rumors originating or where is this rhetoric originating from and stuff like that.
Hey Keffals, want to see what that person who started the discourse is up to? Let me see. Wait, what the fuck? What the fuck? Sadly, I have to leave Twitter to go look after my uncle who's unfortunately sick. He worked his whole life as a humble hat merchant, but he's recently suffered from a neurological disorder. He calls me a chud bud. Yeah, that was it. I got fucking canceled by a Nazi. Finally, I'll give my thoughts on why I'll never respect the online leftist movement or take it seriously. Put forward with all the respect that a movement that tears itself to shreds over inconsequential shit.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I
fucking hate everyone. Did that suck going through it? Yes. That fucking sucked so much. But it really just proves, like, how easy it is to fucking manipulate the online left. All of those fucking people platforming Nazis while complaining about me pushing back against Keemstar on my fucking stream. Like, Jesus Christ.
Because, like, it is true that this kind of stuff seems to destabilize the left. Like, people on the right understand that if you try to weaponize these kind of, like, surface level identity politics, words being used kind of shit, they can weaponize that against liberals, against leftists, in order to provoke infighting, and then they just sit on the sidelines and eat popcorn and laugh about it. Like, they are very aware that this happens, and they're aware that this is happening now. So I think you should be really cognizant of that as well. Because, like, even Keffals has been the victim of that before, where right-wingers pretending to be leftists have started shit about her. This happens fairly frequently. I've heard of in-person DSA and other leftist orgs having internal strife over this sort of thing. Yeah, no, there's always people infiltrating groups. The CIA infiltrates leftist groups, right? Like, this is a thing that people do. So when it comes to my specific views around the R slur, I will be honest with you. I try not to use it in my public platforms, right? There have been some times where I have, like I said, in like a heat of passion, it'll slip out, usually when I'm debating dumbass right-wingers that come into my chat and are acting as bad faith as possible. Sometimes it slips out. I try not to, though, and I've been better about it recently. But I will tell you that in my personal life, I do use it as a term of endearment, given the history of myself as a disabled person, the people that I live with who understand that that's how I'm using it. I use it self-referentially and also as a term of endearment, but I also use it as an insult against people that are like actively anti-disabled people, anti-queer people, like Ron DeSantis or Matt Walsh or whatever. But there is a difference between your personal rhetoric and your public rhetoric. And this might sound similar to some arguments that some other people made in the past, but I do think that there are better words that you can use than the R slur in your public lexicon, right? In your public platforms. And that's what I do as well. There are a lot of like examples out there. Like, I feel like people say troglodyte, but I feel like that's way too long of a word and it sounds way too, you're a troglodyte. It sounds very soy. Smooth brain is pretty good. Two head is pretty fine, but it's more niche. You could say brain dead, but theoretically that could also be seen as ableist. Idiot, dumb, stupid, etc. can also be seen as ableist, though. Low IQ, like all of this is talking about people's, like your perception of their intelligence. And there is an argument to be made that all those could also be ableist, but there are other words. The one that I like to use a lot, and if you've heard other people use it in this way, then it might have come from me, because I don't know anybody else who does, is the word redacted. Like, you are redacted, this redacted-ass motherfucker. Or mentally redacted, which is to say that this person who is mentally redacted has had their brain removed, redacted, because of the propaganda that they've been fed or the opinions that they have or whatever. Like, I'll say that to Matt Walsh, for instance. Because to redact is to censor, to remove, etc., etc. The thing I like about this word is that it sounds like the R slur, right? And I am using it to replace the R slur. It starts with the same two letters, it has the same amount of syllables, and it's punchy. That's the big problem you have with, like, troglodyte, right? Like, it's too verbose, it's not very punchy. The reason why people like the R slur, by the way, and use it in, like, an edgy way as an insult, is because of the way that it sounds. I'm sorry, but that's true. That's what it is. The way that it sounds, and potentially even the taboo around using it, or whatever, if you want to be an edgy person. Redacted. It's punchy. It's the same for, like, the F slur, by the way. It's very punchy to say it. Chud is a good one? I don't know about that. It feels too fucking tip-tip milady meme for me. It's just whenever I hear people say it, it's not that great. It doesn't sound as good. I don't know. But I like redacted. I think it's a fine word. It sounds like it. It starts with the same letters. Like, I think it's a good one. Anyway. And then I guess the question is, well, why use any of these words to begin with? So usually when people are using them on the left, they're going to be talking about people who are not on the left. The reason is because it seems like rhetorically it can be effective at entertaining people, making people more open to taking you seriously if they don't already agree with you, if they're like toward the center and not like part of the, oh my god, please use tone indicators, RUSRS or RU/J, you know, that kind of group, which is not the norm. And if you're terminally online and you think that's the norm, you should probably investigate communities outside of the internet and see just how often people are using your tone indicators and aren't using problematic language. It seems like people like using problematic language. It seems like it is entertaining for people to do that, and it seems like it is conducive to growing a platform and providing entertainment for people to use it. The thing is, you have to use it responsibly. Like, words are a tool, like any other tool that could be used for good or for bad. You can use the F slur in a reclamatory sense as a term endearment among your friends to disempower the word, and that is using that tool in a good way. You can also use it in a negative way as a homophobe, using it to dehumanize queer people. That is a bad way to use the tool that is the word. So, I don't know exactly where I'm going with this conversation. I think I've covered essentially what I want to cover in this, to give my take. I don't think Keffals should be deplatformed for this. I don't think this should spawn this kind of discourse, or that people on the left that use the R slur, well, I don't think it's best to use it in public because it leads to shit like this. I don't think that the people that do use it should be met with like waves of bad faith critique, which unfortunately overshadow the good faith critique that is also there. And I don't think that these people should become like public enemy number one and also not considered part of the left anymore for using a word that makes you uncomfortable and rightfully makes you uncomfortable. I don't think that that's an appropriate response. And yeah, I guess. I don't know. Charitability is very important. It seems like people are lacking it. The toxic shithole of the Twitter sphere kind of leads people to be less charitable and more bombastic in their language because it gets you more engagement, either negative or positive. And much the same way, you can get a lot of attention for calling out people like Keffals or whatever. And you might get a lot more engagement that you're usually getting. But I feel like people need to be more careful about how they engage with it. Because this is not a thing that should be like the subject of the day for multiple days. And to wrap it all up, for the reasons why people are like hyper-focusing on the problematic elements of Keffals' speech to the detriment of focusing on more important shit that actually matters, I think the reason why, and Hassan talks about this a lot, and I think it is correct, people feel disempowered in our society because they are literally disempowered by a variety of systemic factors in our society. And it is harder to conceive of changing legislation, stopping legislation, putting in place pro-trans legislation, which would be more effective and help more people and stop more people from being harmed. People will instead default to attacking random people online for their perceived wrongdoings, especially people on the left, because those things seem more tangible and the effects that you could get for doing that seem more possible, right? Like you can potentially get Keffals banned from Twitter, but that's not activism. That's not helping very many people at all in any substantive way. But it seems easier because it is easier to achieve that. That's why people would rather focus on that kind of shit, or like doing consumer side action to try to cancel Dave Chappelle or whatever, right? Like I'm not gonna watch the special, blah, 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 blah. They would sooner do that kind of thing instead of the on the ground direct action, the electoral engagement to try to stop this kind of legislation or put in place pro-trans legislation. All of that is going to be a lot harder. So that's why people default to that. And those people are victims of a society and of a power structure that disempowers them. So it is understandable to me that there are going to be people that would rather focus their attention on things they think they can actually have an effect on. Though I don't think that it has a good like effect long term. But I can understand the motivations for doing it, and those people are victimized by the societies that are disempowering them and leading them to that kind of reasoning. But it doesn't excuse a lot of the negative, bad faith shit that I've seen. So yeah, I guess those are my takes. Take them for what you will. I think people who watch me kind of understand that I'm already a bit more edgy. I'm not as edgy as some people, but I'm a bit more in my public platform than a lot of other left-leaning content creators. I just don't like seeing a lot of the negative aspects of this discourse that I've seen, nor like the outsized focus on it, especially compared to the other shit. So I mean, it is what it is, I guess. Anyway. Yeah. This video is kind of called as Asphodel, a regular live stream chatter who's suspiciously on their third win. I'm watching you. If you'd like to be the next Conure caller, all you can do is follow me on Twitter at ConureCC, retweet my video links when they go live. Remember to subscribe to the channel, put all notifications on with the bell, leave a like if you'd like, comment something down below about how Nuanced is dead, and we need to bring it back. Have a good day.